Hello there, and welcome to our Honoring Service web series. Today, I'm delighted to have Jennifer Zais, Vice President at Booz Allen Hamilton, as our guest today. Jennifer is a West Point graduate who then continued her military service as an acquisition officer. After 20 years, she retired as a lieutenant colonel, and her service didn't stop there. She continues to be a leader in the defense contract world, continuing to oversee projects that are vital to our national security interests. Jen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to get right into it. How did the military impact how you view the roles and responsibility of citizenship?
For me, the military is all about people. And, they say, people first, mission always. It is a profoundly human endeavor. And, it is just an amazing opportunity to get to lead people, to, help oversee their development and our evolution, together in, going after a common purpose and sharing a common set of values. And that's something that I've always found to be incredibly important. They talk about that at West Point, right? That we, when we choose to serve, we choose to live above the common level of life. And that was something that I've always carried with me throughout my service, and something that I've tried to instill in my soldiers, my subordinates, and even, my leaders, that people are watching us and what we do matters. And we always have to, kind of set that higher standard, in everything that we do. So that's, kind of an incredible component.
Always trying to live a life of example. That's a hard thing to do. Did you know this was something you always wanted to do? Like, did you come in a military family? I was going to be in the Army, all about it?
No, not at all. Actually, I never planned to be in the Army. I was going to be a high school band director. That was my chosen path. But, I go back, I'm a fourth generation. My great-grandmother immigrated here from the Netherlands with a second grade education. And, she was able to build an entire life here. She ran her own business. She never learned how to subtract. That's what I learned early on in my life. She used to just add up to the next dollar amount in order to run her business. But her point was never shy away from the opportunity to learn, because she didn't have that. And that was something that my mom had instilled in me, is that, this country gives us so much opportunity in terms of your ability to be anything that you want to be, but you have to get your education. So that's really the inflection point for me when I decided, that maybe being a band director and going to college when, I was going to have to pay for it myself, and didn't really want to be that much in debt coming out of college. That's when, the military really seemed like a tremendous opportunity for me. It was a chance to get an Ivy League education. And so I will say, in the beginning, it wasn't necessarily about service. It was about, getting the very best education that I could, so that, I could contribute meaningfully, to my society. But it was through the process, as you know, Gerald, of going to West Point. You come to understand what it means to, dedicate your life to, or at least the first 5 years. I don't know that anyone knows that they're going to stay, 10, 15, 20 or more years. But it was really there through that experience of, number one, getting this amazing educational opportunity, but then at the same time being educated in the importance of leadership and service. It was a great opportunity, and that's really, my unintended path to service. But you know what? Looking back, I've had so many people ask me, would you encourage your children to do this? Would you do it again if you had the chance? And I would say, without question, I would absolutely do it again.
And you do have a child actually serving.
I do. My daughter is a rising sophomore at West Point. Very, very proud of her. and she made that decision for herself, right? Because I think service also it has to be personal to you. You can't necessarily do it for somebody else. You have to find it within yourself, to make that decision.
So a lot that was there. And again, you weren't just serving, you went through West Point, the United States Military Academy, to get that education. Great background there. And then, like you said, 20 years, lieutenant colonel, acquisition officer, keeping our Army at the cutting edge, really. And then you decide to keep doing that now in this federal contract work. And I know when a lot of people think about federal contracting and otherwise, they think the executive branch is really easy just to go right to the president with stuff. But, we have this whole government and politics curriculum that now highlights that there's also this bureaucracy that's there. We have these civil servants and otherwise. So how do you navigate that? Who is it that you actually work with? Is it always the military? And who is it that you actually serve?
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting question because, I didn't realize when I made the transition to become an acquisition officer that there was an entire business side of the Army, right? Most of us spend our time in, field units, we're with soldiers, uniformed military, but there's an entire half of the Army that, is a civilian workforce, a contract workforce, that is solely dedicated to equipping and training, our military. And without them, we would be, utterly lost, really. So the people that I serve or serve with are, the program managers, the analysts, the policymakers that are driving forward the requirements for, whether it's weapons, uniforms, tanks, that entire, as you said, bureaucracy is, largely the work of what we see happening at the Pentagon, within the Army staff, within the other service components, and then the Joint Staff. So part of my career was spent supporting the Army G3, who, drives all of our requirements, and operations for the Army, and serving as his acquisition advisor to help ensure that the warfighting priorities were being adequately supported, with the material that we were procuring. But in my role today, I am lucky enough to serve directly in support of our program executive offices for basically our intel and our sensors, as well as our networks, so PEOC3N and IEWNS. Those two organizations are incredibly important to our military's ability to, be the dominant force that we are today with respect to our ability to sense and manage the flow of data, our networks, everything that we need to communicate and command and control effectively. So the team I lead sits directly with these program offices, and every day they are helping to, work through the requirements for new materiel, help through, the research and development and the science and technology necessary to come up with the cutting edge capabilities. We help take them through test and evaluation, and then finally we support these PMs getting the material out to the field and ensuring that our soldiers are trained and they understand how to use the equipment. So, we are literally hand in hand in those program offices delivering that capability every day. And it's
Same
incredibly,
job.
Yeah, it's the same job. But what I love about it is, Booz Allen has a great reputation of being almost 25% veteran or military spouses, military affiliated folks. But I will say that, my team is certainly not all military or all veterans, but they all have that same sense of commitment and purpose, and I'll say a servant's heart in the work that they do in what I described in delivering capability. So it's really exciting to see. You don't have to have served in the military or come from that background to, be really passionate about what you do.
And so, no, you bring up a great point, right? Not every young person is going to raise that right hand and swear that oath that we did to the Constitution. But that doesn't mean you can't serve. So how do you encourage young people to serve their communities?
Well, I think, you know, I'll start with, with the folks that, that I work with, helping connect them to the purpose and the value of what they do is incredibly important. And that I would say is a broader theme, right? So in whatever service you may be encouraging, helping people to understand how important their contributions are in the bigger picture. What is the impact of, of their support is incredibly important, because sometimes we get very stovepiped and myopic in our view that we don't necessarily see that, I'll say, the end user, and really be able to understand what you do today has a profound impact. And I think helping young folks, whether it's the people I work with or even my children, understand the second and third order effects and that sort of chain of value from you do this today, enabling other things to happen, will ultimately deliver incredible value on the other end. And that doesn't have to be military service, but it is just simply showing up in the community, and again, having kind of that servant's heart and putting other people first.
The ripple effect that's there. Whenever you talk about service and stuff, you also talk a lot about leadership. And I know you'll actually appreciate that BRI has a large collection of curriculum for President Dwight Eisenhower. And specific to that, I actually like to highlight the Eisenhower and Responsibility curriculum we have, where this is looking at General, or the commander of the Allied Forces, Eisenhower, in his time right before D-Day, where he's preparing for this invasion. And he realized he was going to take responsibility for everything if it failed. So before he even committed troops to the battle, he actually wrote a letter that took all responsibility, saying, everyone fought bravely, it's my fault that things didn't go right in case the worst happened. What do you think about that link, about why it's maybe so essential for a leader to have and take responsibility?
As you remember, as a commander, you're responsible for everything that happens and fails to happen. And we say that, and it is ultimately true. And I think, it's really important that we internalize that. I know I did, I know you did. Because I think that level of responsibility, it gives people comfort. And it helps them to understand that, we're about to go into, you talk about D-Day, right? One of the most horrific experiences. And it gives people hope and courage that their leader is behind them, that we underwrite and, endorse all of the training, everything that has gone into that moment, that, and that we believe in them. And I think it's as much about, yes, it's important that we have that sense of responsibility, but I've come to learn, we never really go it alone. But I think allowing them to, your soldiers or, the people you work with, to understand, hey, I've got your back, and I'm raising my hand to say I'm going to take this responsibility. At the end of the day, we end up taking it together. But again, I think it's just so important because it takes a level of burden, off of them.
Proof that a leader has your back. Yeah. I love that. I know your time is so valuable, Jen, so I want to give you this last moment. Are there any parting words that you want to share with our students and teachers?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple things. First and foremost, I go back to two things my mom used to tell me when I was young. Number one, she said, do the hard things when you're young. Choose to set aside, maybe the fun and we'll say the normal college experience, if you will, right? USC versus West Point, right? But thinking through why you're making that decision it's like choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. But this is about investment in yourself and who you're going to show up and be for the community and for, your family later on, right? And so it's really investing early because we have much more energy when we're young. And I think the other thing that she instilled in me is no thing you ever learn will be wasted. So while it may not be readily applicable in the moment, and I have this conversation with my oldest daughter a lot about, her major and, what should I pick and what should I do? The fact is, everything you learn at some point is going to surprise you when it shows up and you realize, wow, I can apply this in this moment. And it gives you so much innovation and creativity when you can draw on a very rich, a rich set of learnings. So, I encourage my family, my, folks I work with, take every opportunity you have to learn. Because it's the thing that allows us to grow and help other people, and it will provide value. You just don't know necessarily when.
I love that. Take the risk while you're young, and don't be afraid of learning things because it's never going to be wasted.
Absolutely.
Jen, thank you so much for joining us today. And to our viewers, please take a look at the description. We'll have some links to some of the curriculum that we mentioned today. Thank you again.